if I can recommend anything to anyone, reassess what your values are. Use ChatGPT, whatever that is, type in, hey, provide me with a whole list of core values and try to identify what your top 5 are and figure out, what are those action steps that you either need to maintain or improve on, just on a daily, basis and all of that, even in your work setting. So that way you can start aligning with that values.
Welcome to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. This podcast is more than storytelling, it's archival justice. For too long, the voices of Black educators who have left traditional spaces in education have been silenced, dismissed, or left out of the record. Here, we reclaim that narrative. Every interview is a living archive capturing the wisdom, resilience, and truth of Black educators who have shaped classrooms, communities, and generations. Together, we name the challenges: racial battle fatigue, systemic inequities, the weight of caring too much, but we also honor the brilliance and joy that Black educators bring, the creativity, the innovation, the care, and the deep legacy of resilience. Each episode is both a testimony and an offering, an act of preservation for those who came before, and a guide for those still walking this path today. By listening, you are helping to ensure that these stories are not lost but held, celebrated, and passed forward. So take a breath, settle in, and join us as we honor the past, uplift the present, and reimagine the future of education together. All right, folks, welcome back to The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. It's me, your host, Dr. Asia. Folks, I know you're not going to believe this, but we're at the end of season 5. And we have one more special guest in season 5. Khiara Mills has come on to speak to us. Welcome to the show, Mills. How are you today?
Thank you. I'm doing well. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be a part of the wrap up of the season. So I appreciate you for having me today.
Yeah, of course, of course. Got to end strong. Started off strong with Dr. Jen Wright, ending strong too. Tell us, the audience, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So again, my name is Khiara Mills, aka Mills. So I am a licensed therapist and owner of Motivating Minds Mental Health Counseling, PLLC. That is my private practice. I'm licensed both in Texas and Illinois, based here in Texas. I'm from St. Louis, Illinois area. So I grew up, as I always kind of say, I was born in Hawaii, raised in Cali a little bit, but jumped off the porch in St. Louis/Illinois.
Yeah, I
So
love that.
a lot of my growing up was back and forth from Cali and Illinois/St. Louis. So like more so of my years in Illinois/St. Louis though, versus in California. So yeah, so outside of that, I do individual therapy, also do some group therapy here and there, a lot of community wellness-based events, and of course now switching over into school contracts and stuff. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I always say, when we met earlier, you said St. Louis. I'm like, that's Detroit's cousin.
great. Everyone who know me, even if you watch my videos, I'm always saying what up though, because I got some cousins from Detroit.
You
So like,
said
yeah,
that.
I'm always saying what up though. I've been like that since probably high school saying that.
Yeah. And you said on like a fun note that you have some puppies. So tell us about
Yes,
that.
I do. I have 2 pups. A lot of everyone who knows me probably knows them. Honey, Love, and Ace. So
Oh,
those are my
yeah.
babies. Those are my best broke friends that I can't claim my taxes. But yeah, so those are my babies. So outside of my pups, that's like I spend a lot of time with them. I also ride my motorcycle as well
Okay.
when I need some just therapy, I guess, in a sense, but enjoying this Texas weather. But yeah, that's a little bit about, me and kind of what I do in my leisure time outside a lot of self-care.
Yeah. And we'll get into that too, for sure. Because, we always want to hear about how people take care of themselves. But
Oh yeah.
let's just jump into it. Tell us about your journey into education. How'd you know that education was for you?
Yeah, so I didn't.
I
We'll
hear
start
that all the time on this show.
we'll start there, yes. It was one of those, tell God your plan, he gonna laugh at you type stuff. I grew up playing basketball. That's just another piece about me. So point guard at that. But doing nursing was always my backup plan. Being a nurse anesthetist was always my backup plan if I didn't pursue basketball. And I made that decision to like after my freshman year in high school, I stopped playing basketball. So I'm like, all right, no, whatever route I go is gonna be in nursing. So that is the route that I went undergrad. Overall, freshman and undergrad, 17 at that, emancipated from parents and my mom, like, wow. So, and my grades reflected that.
Yeah.
So I was actually forced to switch my major, but long story short, in the midst of that, I began volunteering after school at Rissy's program. So just mentoring youth, helping them with their homework and stuff. And it was a young Black girl there, probably like middle school age. I was helping her with her homework, during the times that I would visit. And she had reached honors for the first time. And what got me, man, just think about this, like, just makes me tear up every time I think about this. But she was super excited, but it wasn't because she just let alone, reached honors for the first time. What she said was, "My mom's finally gonna love me." And that just, like I said, it just makes me want to tear up now. I just think about it. But like that just hit me. It was like really one of those whoa moments, like, what the heck is really going on here, So nonetheless, I graduated from my program. I had switched to public health at that point from nursing. So, still kind of got into CNA work just to still see if I wanted to do nursing. One of my coworkers, because I was still also working my high school job after I graduated, and she was like, "Hey, why don't you hop into this counseling program?" Did that unknowingly, I was applying for jobs, forgot that I applied for this school position job, and that's where it started. So got into my, counseling program while working the school job and literally just took off from there. So it was just one of those again. I thought I wanted to do this. God was like, yeah, no, let's go this way.
Yeah, I think about Najma was on our show nursing at first and then went into education. You said you was wilding out, emancipated from your family, did everything, is that, and the third. And so did you ever have a conversation with any of your family or community like, nursing's not for me, I'm gonna do public health, never mind, I'm gonna do this. Was there ever a conversation or you just like, as long as I'm in school, it's good? How did that go?
Yeah, no, growing up, it was always me, my nana, and my mom. When I officially moved back, so I moved from my mom, living with my mom, going into my sophomore year of high school. So before my high school year started, I moved back permanently with my nana at the time. So that she was in St. Louis or Illinois area. So all in all, I say all this just to give you an idea of like what my family dynamic was like. So my mom was like, yeah, as long as you going to school, being successful, obviously she wanted me to pursue nursing, kind of living out her dream in a sense.
Mhm, mhm.
But my nana, she was proud of me nonetheless, regardless of what I was doing. So my dad, he stayed in St. Louis, like again, same thing. My dad was super supportive of whatever route, whatever major I was doing as well. So yeah, they knew obviously what my freshman year looked like of just being emancipated and just kicking it.
Yeah,
So that was kind of the setup for me too, though. I would say that like more so when I went as an undergrad, I had 18 credits as a freshman. So you got to think being emancipated, 17, going into college as, a 17-year-old and having 18 credits. I had multiple maths on top of multiple sciences and then just the regular, the rest of the regular gen ed class. And that was my first, again, my whole first year. So by the end of that year, I'm like, they were like, yeah, you got to do something else because it's not it. I'm like, but y'all set
yeah,
me up too. So
yeah. That's interesting.
nonetheless, everybody's supportive and, realize that that just wasn't the path for me. So
Yeah, and it's interesting you said, like, "I had this job and I forgot about applying for this job," and then right, and you're having this conversation with this little girl who now maybe is an adult, I'm assuming, and when you first told that story, I didn't expect you to say what you just said about, "Now my mom can love me," and so it's, like, so many things that lined up for you to go in the direction you went in. So you finished school. What was after that? What was that first job? What was that like?
yeah, so finishing undergrad or finishing master's program.
Either one, whatever you wanna talk
Yeah,
about.
so again, when I finished my undergrad, that's when I was just still trying to pursue. I went back to my high school job just to, have some income because obviously, as everyone knows, it's hard getting a job in your field as soon as you graduate. So I was working my high school job at Finish Line. A lot of people back home probably know. Um,
Shout out to the mall job, shout out to Finish
hey,
Line.
that part. Hey, I'm slinging them shoes for sure. But yeah, so I was working still at Finish Line just to bring in some income while also, pursuing my CNA certification to see, okay, do I still want to do nursing? Like I said, that's when obviously my coworker from Finish Line that I've known for several years was like, why don't you just hop into this council program? So that's what led to that. And, I got into the counseling program. While in the counseling program, that's when I was applying for, counseling related jobs. Forgot I applied for the school. They reached out and I started that in 2016. So I have been working, I was a school therapist from 2016 all the way up until 2023. Moved out here in Texas as well in 2022. So I was still with a company back home. We partner with a school out here in Dallas. So I was doing that alongside my private practice. I had my private practice since 2022. So my practice was a baby, at that
Yeah.
point. So yeah, and now obviously just doing full time my practice since 2023. So
And we'll talk about that. I'm not done with
yeah,
the I'm not done with the my audience know I gotta get all the meat and cheese.
all good on my but
Yeah, so you were a school counselor, school therapist for quite a while, and when we talked a while back, you were just telling me about all the things that you saw in the school and, like, the need, and so I just wanted to hear from your perspective because we have all types of folks who come on in education, but from your perspective, what was that you saw that was a need in your school? What were some things that were inspirational, some things that were really challenging as you were going through those you said 2017?
2016 to 2023.
Yeah.
Left St. Louis or left Illinois in 2022. So I was there from 2016 to 2022, but still with that company because we partner with a school out here in Dallas. So just still as a school therapist with that same company
Yeah.
until 2023.
Yeah, so tell us about your experience and all that time that you were in with the kids.
Yeah. So back home, I'm gonna just call my school mob, like literally just the acronyms of what the school name actually is. And those who know, they know. So I worked in a private behavioral school.
Okay.
So we took kiddos in the area that could not go back to their schools. We took kiddos. We were the last stop, basically.
Mhm.
So these kiddos, we didn't expel or suspend as well. So they can come back, do whatever, XYZ, still come back to school, let's just say the next day, or if they had some type of consequence, couple days or whatever that looked like, right? They could go to jail and still come back if they were still of age. I think back then, I think they had up until their like 21st birthday. So again, these are kiddos with social, emotional, and behavioral needs. So again, we took the quote unquote worst of the worst or the most challenging of the most challenging.
Mhm.
So that in itself, it was obviously new, right? I got adjusted to it, but it was still, a lot of just depleting days, right?
Sure.
And as we know, like in those type of environments, everyone's stretched thin here and there. But with the school setting in general, for me, I see or saw that I think this is common in school settings. There's a lot of politics that go behind the schools that happen within the school setting. So there was just, when it goes to when we talk about as far as just things that I did not align with, those are some of the things, just the organization structure of it at that time. I would say within my last couple of years of leaving home, we had an organizational change in our building. So things like blossom, right? But at that point, I was already one foot out the door and the
Yeah.
other foot was already up and, ready to be planted back down. And I'd already started my relocation, all that. So had that, been the case, like we had the organizational change in the beginning, I probably still would be there. So yeah, there was just a lot of that. But I love, my kiddos, man, just the changes that I was seeing, the impact that I was seeing that I was having on those kiddos, such as that young girl, that I work with in undergrad, so that's what kept me planted. That's what kept me showing up in the school setting. I had, some supportive coworkers as well. We were a team. So yeah, I definitely in the school setting always will have my heart, for
Yeah.
sure.
So, I'm curious to know, you talked about some of the policies that didn't align with your own values.
Yeah.
What are some things that, as an educator, that you said like, "Oh, this is not gonna work," or, "This doesn't make sense for our kids?" Some examples that you may have.
Yeah. Without getting like specific with that, more so, let's just say when it comes to the benefit of what's, and like you somewhat just mentioned, what will work best with this kiddo as far as, let's just say, behavior change or a lot of it too. I think there was a lot of struggle of, yes, I get it. We're in a school setting and academics has to be, take a priority, but at the same time, in that type of school setting, sometimes we have to look at other things taking a priority above academics at that point, or for that day or for whatever that reason was, for that student having that behavioral change. So, there's just some, just kind of confliction with that of really looking deeper into what's really going on with this kiddo and hey, let's go this route versus the, suggested kind of corporate route of where they want to go with the kiddos or with the parent or the resources and all of that. So, and that's what, again, just kind of prompted me to move outside of the school setting was just knowing that I can have that bigger impact or that deeper connection with kiddos and their parents and give them those resources outside of what I was able to do in the school setting.
Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that. I'm curious to know a couple of things. One, why private behavioral school versus like a public school or some other space? So I'll start with that question. Why that space? And you were there in some like the same org for a long time. So did you fall into that job? Were you specifically looking for that type of work?
Oh, I don't even know what was running through my mind at that time of like in my counseling program. Like I said, when I tell you I was just, hey, like whatever on Indeed, just looking for any counseling related position. I don't even recall. I don't even think they probably even worded it as behavioral because I probably would have been like, yeah,
Mm,
nah.
yeah.
Yeah. So I just don't really recall even applying for that actual school or position. But obviously, after getting into it, because it didn't start off like that. Mind you, I was a part of opening up this school. So this school was just yet. So we opened that August of 2016. So mind you, we started off with one kiddo, then two kiddos, and then probably like a good maybe 10. So again, things weren't as they eventually got to be
Sure.
in the beginning. So, and again, I think again, it just goes back to me having that deep connection and seeing what was really needed and knowing that, okay, well, how many other Black educators are in this building right now or in this building in general, right? And then also that are in the clinical leadership that can really make that connection. So with me making that observation, I knew, okay, this is where I possibly need to be at this time. And, if anything else is meant for me, then God will lead me there. So yeah, obviously I was planted there for a while.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
realized that.
Yeah, I think, as you're talking about this and you're talking about the challenges and starting a school from the ground up, no matter what position that you're in, either if you're a teacher, if you're a counselor, if you're anybody, it's a huge push. So during that time, because you mentioned self-care at the beginning of the show, during that time, if you can remember, like what were some of the strategies that you used to take care of yourself? Because I do remember you talking about it being, in our other conversation, it being quite stressful at times. So what were some things that you did to take care of yourself? And were there different policies or strategies that your school used to emphasize you all taking care of yourselves?
Yeah. So let's start with that latter question because no. And I think that's the issue with a lot of schools now, that wellness piece is missing, which is leading me again into the school contracts to implement that piece. But so no, outside of yeah, you all have these PTO days, but even again, when it comes to school setting, it's kind of frowned upon or you kind of question when you use your PTO, even though they
Mhm.
know of workload and all that and, just all of that that you're dealing with. So I was very strategic with using my PTO though. I can say that now. After so many, probably my first couple of years in, I'm like, okay, I know like what months that we don't really have any vacations. I'm gonna use my PTO for around this time. But going back to just the self-care, I think I've always like self-care is that's always been ingrained in me. Like I've always been very big on just pouring into myself. So some things I definitely again starting off in the mornings, I'm grounding myself in my faith, So I'm doing something spiritually, whether that's praying, talking to God, listening to a spiritual podcast, making sure that I'm eating, just taking my time as well in the morning because I feel like regardless of whatever type of job or position that you work, when we're waking up and we're just straight on go mode and just in a rush, like you're already off, right?
Yeah.
So just being intentional with my time, balance, structure, again, my faith. I don't think I got my pups until a year later. Yeah, so I got them in 2017. So once I got them, obviously started some different forms of self care of walking, taking them to the
Yeah.
parks. It's kind of what my decompression looked like, after working whatever day, taking them to parks and walks. But another big thing, which I feel like just a lot of clinicians, therapists, counselors, just teachers, all of that, we struggle with leaving work at work, right? Especially in that
Yeah.
setting.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
had a real big boundary on that. So I think that really helped me because I believe it there. Like, and my employers knew, like, yes, I will probably stay. Hey, y'all got me for about like maybe 15 minutes any day that y'all need me or so. Other than that, I'm not taking no work home. I'm not, unreachable, when I'm at home. Like, I'm not getting paid for any of this. So, so I had a real, real big boundary. And I set that boundary from the get go, the interview and all of that. So it wasn't something that was just like one of those, oh, just out of nowhere. Like, nah, y'all knew who I was from the beginning.
Yeah. So that's so interesting because you're sharing this is that you're coming in as a first year, like never have been experienced before, but you're saying I came in with boundaries. And it seems like a lot of people on our show find those boundaries like you're talking about later because they've been like pushed to the extreme or they've left a job and they learned the lesson from whatever. How did you like how'd you come about like these are the boundaries that I have from the get-go? Where did that come from?
Yeah. So one, I'm very big on just being aware of what my values are. And I feel like that's something I also just super side note. I work with my clients right off the bat. Our very first session after the intake session, one of the things that we're doing is identifying their top core values because I feel like when you are unaware of what your values are, you have no GPS in life, right? You have no
Mm,
in your day to day decision making, all of that. So time is one of my biggest core values. My values have changed over time, like
sure.
literally over time, but just time, my health, and wealth, those have always been my top three. And, I try to stick to the top five, but time is like probably at the top, so knowing what my values were and, at that time, I hate to keep on using time, but and is what, obviously led me to that. So I feel like if I can recommend anything to anyone, reassess what your values are. Use ChatGPT, whatever that is, type in, hey, provide me with a whole list of core values and try to identify what your top five are and figure out, what are those action steps that you either need to maintain or improve on, just on a daily, basis and all of that, even in your work setting. So that way you can start aligning with that value. So that can be in a good, healthy space in a school setting.
And I think this is so interesting because you're right. So many teachers, so many school counselors, whatever, when I educators get into a space of like, I have to do this for the kids. I got to stay up for the kids. Everybody else is staying after work. Everybody else is taking work home. And there isn't this conversation either in the university or with some program or through a mentor. There's no conversation before that about values, about boundaries, about wellness. And so people kind of fall upon these things usually when they're stretched thin. And so it's really interesting that you're talking about like, nah, when I was at finish line, I was telling it, right? Like it's always been important to you. And so I'm just going to reiterate for the audience that if you don't know what your values are, if you've never written them down and looked at them and studied them, I am agreeing with Mills 100% and saying, yeah, write those down, think about those, cross them out, add to them until you really are clear about where you are in your life right now and like what your values are. And like you're saying, are you living those values out? Because there's one thing to say like, oh, this is who I am. But if no one else would be able to say like, yeah, that's true. I can see that. Then are you really living those full out? So thank you for sharing that.
Yes, 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 most definitely, most definitely.
Yeah.
It's my little free jam for y'all.
I appreciate that. You keep them gems going. Every voice on the exit interview carries wisdom, resilience, and the reminder that Black educators deserve more than survival. They deserve to thrive. At Lions Educational Consulting, we create the spaces where that wisdom lives on in practice. For individual Black educators, our workshops offer room to breathe, to pause, and to rediscover purpose. For schools and districts, our consulting opens pathways to build equity-centered environments that honor Black educators and ensure they are seen, valued, and supported. These conversations don't stop at the end of the podcast episode. They ripple outward into classrooms, into leadership decisions, and into communities that benefit when Black educators are well. You're already a part of this story just by listening. If you're ready to take the next step, whether as a Black educator seeking wellness or as a leader reimagining your school's future, we'd love to walk with you. Connect with Lions Educational Consulting by connecting with me, Dr. Asia, on LinkedIn, or join me on Instagram. Together, let's transform stories into sustainable change. Now let's get back to the interview. So you, like you said, I decided to leave. One foot was out the door, one foot was in the door. They changed policy and things were really going well, but it was kind of too late for me. What were some things that helped you decide it was like time to do something different? Not necessarily leave therapy and counseling, but time for you to try to move out of the education realm in that capacity.
Yeah. So there were several factors that played a part in that. So kind of going back to just personal about me, like I mentioned, going back to family dynamics, it always have been me, my nana, and my mom. My younger brother, he didn't come around. I was 14 when my mom had him, so he was still a baby. So
Yeah, of
anyway,
course.
just
Yeah.
coming back around my dad until I was 9. But I mean, again, like I said, when I permanently moved with my nana. So I'm giving you this context because my mom was the only one living in California. She still lives in California. All the rest of my family, my nana, my dad, St. Louis, Illinois, right? So I was living with my nana back home in Illinois this whole time. And my nana passed the weekend of me starting this job in 2016. She passed like that Thursday, Friday, started the job Monday, right? Context of this, she also lived catty-cornered across the street from the school that I was working at. So like literally across the street, can see in plain view where her house is. And then my dad unexpectedly passed in 2021. So like I mentioned, I left the school, I relocated in 2022. So like I mentioned earlier, I had, already started, just kind of getting burnt out from the job itself or, just everything going on with the job. So by
Mm-hmm.
that point, when my dad had passed, there was also opportunity where the son of our CEO came down, which he visited our building very frequently. And, this is before my dad had passed, I believe. I had asked him, I'm like, have y'all ever, consider opening up a school in Texas? Cause I was just, thinking of relocation in general. I'm like, have y'all ever opened a school? He was like, actually, we're business school right now. That's kind of mirrored, what we do. And that's obviously the company that I transitioned to or, joined when I moved down here. So that was kind of in the works prior to my dad unexpectedly passing in December of 2021. So once he did pass, mind you, that was like my main reason in general, even staying, my nana and my dad staying after I graduated my counseling program because, I just enjoyed obviously being with them, being around them. So once they passed, I'm like, I just felt like it was nothing left. Things wasn't really going well with the school setting it, or for me, I felt like I wasn't really growing, shall I say, and had room for growth. And then also, it was just at some point a milestone for me to eventually open up my private practice. So, with that opportunity, I saw the opportunity of relocating here to Dallas. Was trying to just stick to my, milestone goal of opening my practice. I did that actually during my grieving period because that was also a thing I'd already set in stone. Okay, I'm gonna open up my practice January 2022. Like I said, my dad passed December 2021. So I stuck to that plan,
Mm.
did that, by that point, they had start solidifying everything with the school out here in Dallas and it just went from there. So I, relocated, did this, my whole little plan of, okay, I'm gonna work for this school for a year just to, get on my feet out here and jump up time in my practice. So just overall, after kind of just sticking to the plan and like I said, just unexpectedly some of those things happened in between time that just really pushed me to just move forward with that.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Even the getting up and moving from one state to the other, it's like we're finding out a lot about you. You like, listen, I said this, I do this. Again, I hear that. And I hope that the folks listening are taking notes because you said, listen, Pops is going to the great by and by. he would want me to finish doing this. I'm going to finish this out. I'm going to see this through. I'm going to give it a year, but it's so important. I know that so many people, they kind of get like, well, I don't know. Maybe I changed my mind. It's really going well. And then end up later on, a lot of times regretting, like, I should have moved to Texas. I should have did this. And so I'm so glad that you like, no, I'm sticking to the plan. I'm doing what I need to do. Yeah. So thinking back about in your time in the traditional education space, we didn't talk about if you were with other Black educators when you were there, but if you weren't either way, what do you think that schools, districts, organizations like the one you were in could do to retain Black educators?
Yeah, most definitely. I just want to go back and add one thing because I don't
Yeah.
want the viewers to one, just to clarify, I going back to that time period, I did do, because I practice what I preach. I did grief counseling as well, during that time frame. So some people may, look at, okay, when you stick in certain things, especially during grieving, like it's a form of distraction. But I just want to clear
Mhm.
that up. So one, sending
Thank
that
you.
message to anyone else, like, hey, no, be sure that, even if things do pop up for you, whatever, you're still taking care of yourself or healing from whatever it is. So I just want to clear that up. I did actively do grief counseling during that time, as well as just stayed grounded in my faith with God. Like I kept God, I've always kept, God, like, yeah, psyched off here and there as we all do, but, lean heavily, in my faith and stuff as well. So that's another thing. It just helped me push through with that. But
I appreciate you saying that
yeah,
because you're right. People can be like, "Oh wow, she just pushed on through. Her dad fast. That's why." And you know what? You're absolutely right. I'm glad you said that because we do need to take time to grieve and whatever that looks like, counseling, group sessions, like in your faith. I'm so glad that you cleared that up. So thank you.
yeah. And took time off of work too.
Yeah. Oh, so important.
Yes, yes, yes. But yeah, to go back to your question, so with the Black educators, what schools can be doing now, or just in general, with to retain Black educators? Let's start off with, compensation and pay. No particular order, but that is very big, as we already know. A lot of Black educators are not paid the same as some other, races. So I think it's just very important to ensure equal pay across the board. But most importantly, another thing is leadership roles. I didn't have a Black educator as a teacher or whatever until I got into my master's program. I've never had a Black teacher until that point. So I think that is very important, especially when you have kiddos in the school setting that are a part of that culture. Like they need someone that is relatable. So putting those Black educators in leadership roles, the compensation and pay, another important thing, going back to the wellness, making sure that we're prioritizing and they're prioritizing wellness and support for those educators. So ensuring they are, encouraging PTO, ensuring that they're also doing like one-on-one meetings or check-ins or reviews with those educators. That's one thing I really value when I transitioned to this school setting that we are to the school that we partner here in Dallas because they implemented that in their school. And I felt like that was just very important. It really gave a ears to the ground, just a vibe for me. So I feel like that's very important, in any school just to really implement those pieces. And, overall, I feel like once those things are implemented, Black educators won't just, survive, but they'll thrive,
Yeah.
as a school setting. So,
Yeah. The idea of the prioritizing wellness and support is really huge because just thinking back about where you were supporting youth, and this is not a regular K-5 elementary school. This is like a lot is happening. The students are experiencing a lot of trauma. They've come in with a lot of trauma. Like there's a lot of things happening, right? And to say, like you said, oh, we just had regular PTO like everybody else. And there was no emphasis on like, as a group, let's do these things to take care of ourselves. Let's have these conversations. And so we have to make sure, and I love this, putting the onus back on admin, obviously ourselves first, because we can't control what other people do. But when we talk about this compensation, leadership roles, prioritizing wellness and support, one-on-one check-ins, that's so important. This wellness piece, because folks, you can pay folks lots and lots of money, but if they're not well, they're still going to leave.
most definitely, most definitely. And I
Yeah.
definitely, our school back home, like I said, we opened 2016. So probably that October is when just everyone was in and out the door. Like attention, was not the case until, like I said, that organizational change. When did that happen? Probably like 2021 when we had new
Years
leaders.
later. Years
Yeah.
later.
So you're talking about again, even with, and that was just another thing for me stepping out because, with that type of setting and environment of kiddos that we work with, we can never keep, obviously staff and especially clinicians long term. So I work with the high school students, but obviously we had kiddos K through 12. So, them babies in the middle school, I don't know, my heart is to any elementary, middle school therapists, y'all definitely have y'all hands full. But I say all that to say, like, it was just the norm. Like, for 80% of that school year, I'm probably working a different role, such as like the detention room for the high school students, because again, we couldn't keep anyone in there because just school in general, was not for the weak, right? Is would chew you up, literally, verbally, all like, so and just, again, the organizational stuff, all of that. So yeah, I think it's just important to going back to what you're saying, like just to really ensure that wellness piece is in play. And they're also just encouraging mental, which is part of the PTO, but mental health days. That's actually something that was a new like a law back home in Illinois where I don't know if it was St. Louis as well, but for sure back home in Illinois within the past couple of years, they implemented mental health days for students.
Oh, okay.
I don't know why the staff have not picked up on that because obviously if the students need it, you think the staff, and
Yeah.
all that. So yeah, it's the wellness piece is very, very important.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I think I'm gonna ask some other questions around, well, I'll wait till we get to like, what are you doing now? But before that, I want to ask, you just said I didn't have a Black educator until till grad school, until my master's program. But I'm hoping that you can answer the next question for us, which is there a Black educator that you would like to shout out?
Man, listen, this is my time to shine. You know how we get on the BET Awards, they got everybody shout out. But no, one I'm gonna start off definitely with, rest her soul, my high school counselor. Actually, that's where I would say I go back. She wasn't obviously my teacher, but she was the first Black
Sure,
educator.
sure.
So high school, Devil East, Miss Sherelle Hill, rest her soul. If it was not for her, I don't know what college would have looked like for me or if I would have went to college. And it wasn't a thing that I didn't have people in my ear, such as my nana or my mom, tell me to go to college. But like I said, nursing was kind of the backup plan. It was just like my heart wasn't really in it, but hey, this just always been a plan if I didn't pursue basketball. So it's just like, I
Mhm.
really not college for this. So if I didn't have her in my ear, like in helping me, literally sitting me down, doing applications for schools, I don't know where I would be. Like I said, definitely give a lot of thanks to Miss Hill. Dr. Martine, that's my grad professor. So definitely like he kind of helped me, I wouldn't say help me, but he definitely just reassured me indirectly of it's okay to be my authentic self in the school building. And I say that to say like I stepped in the classroom, the first day of class, and this man had on Louis V top to bottom, a purple collar shirt to represent the Qs, Tash just all out. I'm like, oh, okay. And mind you,
Yeah,
I went to school where it's like predominantly like at least that school setting, like predominantly white, professors and stuff like that. So to see him and just see him be his authentic self,
yeah,
I'm like, okay, yeah. So shout out to Dr. Routine, District 189, everyone else in back home. And then as far as definitely my coworkers in the school setting back home as well, those who I still keep in contact, we definitely held each other together, just all those years. There's a counselor here at the school that I, transitioned to out here. Definitely, shout out to her as well for she basically kind of just was dealing with the same stuff or, was me in the school that she's working with now. So yeah, definitely, if anything, what I could say just to the Black educators in general, keep going. Definitely y'all are doing work, y'all are doing the unseen work and making impacts on these students. And, again, even though you're not being acknowledged for it, you're definitely, doing some work with these kiddos and they need us. So
yeah.
definitely.
Thank you. So what are you doing now? You kinda gave us a little sneak peek in the very beginning, and we got the gist, but tell us about what you're doing now.
Yeah. So now I am transitioning from like a full caseload of individual clients. I'm always going to have a small caseload, probably like 5 or so is my goal, because that's always going to be a part of me too, right? Just like the school is, but I'm trying to transition back into the school setting, obviously not the 9 to 5, but trying to reach the pyramid of the school that's, again, that really needs to be touched on. So again, implementing just the wellness piece into schools for and doing trainings and stuff with the staff, the students, and most importantly, the parents. So just bringing that wellness piece into it, into the school setting, and just really trying to help with retention, burnout, obviously student performance, all of that, helping with the parent connection. I don't feel like there's a lot of resources for them to really build on that connection and really know what's really going on with their students or how to connect with their students, at home, which obviously impacts the students, performance when they're at school. So yeah, that's mainly what I'm working towards is the school contracts. I also just gained eligibility to be an LPC supervisor. So I'll be taking on a team of or LPC associates starting sometime next year just to help the next generation, help train them and yeah, just keep this momentum going, this impact. Yeah.
Yeah. Since you have so many gems to give us,
Yeah.
you said you want to help parents connect with students better, with their students better. Can you give us one or two ideas for folks who are listening who have teens or middle schoolers like myself who are like, my connection with my child is really strong right now, but I know in high schools it might be tough, or I've lost connection with my kid and I really want to get that back. Do you have anything that you can advise them to do to support that relationship?
Yeah, most definitely. One, just keep your ears and eyes open. And what I mean by that is pay attention to any changes or behaviors that you're seeing with them. Also, just try to avoid the closed-ended questions, right? The normal, "How was your day?" Of course, kids, they're gonna say the same thing, "Oh, it's cool," whatever. They're gonna brush it off. So try to do more of those open-ended questions, really just diving deep into, how their day is really going or what's new, all of that. So, and also just try to be intentional with that quality time with them too, if you aren't already, right? What I mean by this is like making it a norm where you're either doing something on a daily or weekly basis with them. And it doesn't have to mean where like you're actually going out somewhere, but just spending some type of quality time, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, just sitting down, just whatever that looks like. I don't know if y'all have ever heard of this before, but a lot of kids, the way that they spell love is time, so being very mindful and intentional with that. And if not, like, and this is what I saw in the school setting, when those kiddos don't get that love and that time at home, they're going to search elsewhere, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, the area that I come from and was working in, that's where they reaching out to the gangs, they reaching out to the drugs, they reaching out, all of that. So it's just like, be very intentional with time, be very intentional with connection, be very intentional with just those open ended questions.
Teenagers and kids spell love. Say that again. How you?
The way that
Time.
kids spell love is time, Time.
That is profound. Thank you for that. Thank you for that. So our last question, you talked about how you take care of yourself. This is
Yeah,
not
most definitely.
this is not a mystery, but expound on it if you want to. For you, what does it mean to be well?
Yeah, man, this is broken up into a few different things for me. So I know, particular order too, like just one being your authentic self, right? Balance and boundaries. Not say no particular order, but that's probably the biggest top, ones for sure. Having those boundaries, having that balance. The balance is the structure, the organization, the routine, all of that. The self care falls into play with all of that as well. So balance and boundaries, being your authentic self. I can't say enough, and I keep on saying out in no particular order, but this is probably at the top as well. Just whatever spiritual beliefs, religious beliefs that you have, whatever that looks like for you. For me, I'm grounded in my faith and, with God, I have various, just different ways that I'm connecting with God, church, listening to podcasts, prayer, reading devotionals, all of that, I'm very mindful of just what my social media looks like, all of that, so just being mindful to just what you're feeding yourself on a daily basis.
Mhm.
taking care of yourself holistically. So again, break self-care down into 5 different categories. So mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and socially as well. Financially can be a part of that as well, but just holistically taking care of yourself.
Thank you. And if folks want to work with you, if schools are interested in contacting with you and learning more about what you do, where could they find you?
Yes, most definitely. So, one, you can definitely find me on my website at motivatingmindscounseling.com. I have a contact button there. You can definitely reach out to me there. I am on social media. So, underscore motivating meals. That is on Instagram, TikTok, also LinkedIn as well. So, I have, again, a link on all of those sites to connect with me and do a brief meet and greet. And we see how we can just create this space in the school settings and just make this impact and change, just the whole dynamic of everything for the benefit of the students, the staff, and, the parents.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Mills. All right, folks, I want y'all reaching out. We need to, like, kids spell love Time. Listen, if that don't get you to start, click our website. Like, come on now. So, yes, so thank you so much for coming on, sharing your story. Definitely, this was like a great wrap up to season 5. You all take care of yourself. And obviously, Mills is going to take care of herself, and I'm going to do the same. Have a great rest of your day. All right, peace. Thank you for joining us for today's episode of The Exit Interview, a podcast for Black educators. Every story shared here is a reminder that our wellness matters and that thriving in education is possible when we create spaces of care and belonging. If today's conversation spoke to you, we'd love to keep in touch. You can sign up for our newsletter at exitinterviewpodcast.com or connect with me on LinkedIn to stay up to date on upcoming workshops, consulting opportunities, and ways we're transforming stories into solutions through Alliance Educational Consulting. And before you close out, take a deep breath. Remember that caring for yourself isn't extra, it's essential. Whether you're an educator seeking rest or a school leader reimagining support, you're part of this growing community of care.